first black in that particular league. And we played in a town called Hagerstown, Maryland. Oh, I never forget this day, on a Friday. And they call you all kinds of names there, nigger this, nigger that. And I said to myself, and which I think this is where Piper Davis came in my mind, hey, whatever they call you, they can't touch you. Don't talk back.
The insane truth about this legend is that he crushed everyone on the field, became the biggest star in baseball, and yet MLB still got so offended by him that they pushed him out of the sport entirely. Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, a man who gave nearly 30 years to baseball only to be told he was no longer welcome. This is the story of how the league turned its back on greatness because of a simple job offer. I am Mason, and this is Baseball Icons. In 1979, the same year Willie Mays walked into the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest players who ever lived, Commissioner Bowie Kuhn delivered a message that shocked the baseball world. Mays had accepted a job as a public relations greeter at a casino in Atlantic City, not as a dealer, not as someone running gambling operations, just showing up at events, shaking hands, playing golf with guests. If you are feeling this insane truth already, hit the hype feature and give this video some hype, because this story gets even wilder from here. But Kuhn saw it differently. He gave Mays an ultimatum that felt like a punch to the gut. Take the casino job and cut all ties with Major League Baseball, or walk away from the money and stay connected to the sport you built your life around. Mays was 48 years old at the time. He had been coaching for the New York Mets, earning about $50,000 a year for his services. The casino offered him real financial security for the first time since retirement, a long-term contract, stability, peace of mind. So he took it, and baseball exiled him for it. The ban lasted nearly 6 years. Mays was not allowed in ballparks, not allowed to coach, not allowed to appear at team events. The man who had electrified crowds for decades was suddenly unwelcome in the sport he had carried on his back. And the reason was not illegal activity. It was association, the mere perception of a connection. Commissioner Kuhn was obsessed with protecting baseball from any link to gambling. The 1919 Black Sox scandal haunted the sport for generations. Kuhn was determined never to let the shadow of wagering touch the game again. But here's the problem. Mays was not gambling. He was not encouraging anyone to gamble. Sports betting was not even legal in New Jersey at the time. His job at Bally's Park Place Casino was pure ceremony, meet and greets, charity golf tournaments, customer receptions. He had zero operational role, zero influence over how the business ran, and yet Kuhn treated him like he had committed a crime against baseball. The decision felt personal. It felt cruel. Fans across the country could not understand why a legend was being punished for trying to make a living. Al Rosen, a former Yankees executive working at Bally's, tried to explain to Kuhn how harmless the role was. Mays would simply be a public face, someone who brought star power to promotional events. Kuhn refused to budge. In his mind, the integrity of baseball was more important than the financial reality of a retired player. The image of the sport mattered more than the man who had carried it for nearly 3 decades. So why did Mays need the money? People assume someone as famous as Willie Mays must have retired with millions in the bank, but that is not reality. Mays played almost his entire career under the reserve clause, giving teams total control over player contracts. No free agency, no bidding wars, no massive multi-year deals. Even as the highest paid player of his time, his earnings were nowhere near what modern stars make. In 1950, his signing bonus was $4,000, and his monthly salary was $250. By 1958, he signed the largest contract in Giants history at $65,000 a year. By 1963, at his peak, he made $105,000, the highest in the league. But after taxes and expenses, it did not stretch far. By 1972, his final season salary was around $160,000. After retiring in 1973, his coaching contract paid just $50,000 a year, $50,000 for one of the greatest players in baseball history. But the salary numbers do not tell the whole story. Mays also faced personal financial disasters. His first marriage to Marguerite Wendell Chapman in 1956 ended in a bitter 1963 divorce. The proceedings were devastating. Marguerite hired Marvin Mitchelson, one of the most expensive divorce lawyers in the country. On top of that, financial advisors betrayed him. Mays had grown up in poverty in the Deep South, sometimes going to school without shoes. He did not have the training to spot people stealing from him. Biographer James Hirsch noted that Mays reached a point where he felt he could not trust anyone. So when the Bally Casino offered a long-term contract with real security, it was not greed. It was survival. And yet Kuhn banished him anyway. The commissioner did not care about context or hardship. He cared about optics. about how it would look if a Hall of Famer was associated with a casino, about protecting the image of baseball at all costs. For nearly 6 years, Willie Mays was a ghost in the sport he had built. He was not allowed to attend games in an official capacity. He could not coach. He could not make appearances for teams. He was shut out completely. The exile ended in 1985 when Peter Ueberroth took over as commissioner. Ueberroth had just successfully run the Los Angeles Olympics, turning what was supposed to be a financial disaster into a massive triumph. He was brought in to modernize baseball, to bring it into a new era of professionalism. One of his first moves was to look at the Mays and Mantle situation because Mickey Mantle had been banned in 1983 for taking a similar casino role. Ueberroth looked at the facts and called it nonsense. Pure, unadulterated nonsense. On March 18, 1985, Ueberroth officially reinstated both Mays and Mantle to the sport. In his statement, he said that the two legends were among the most beloved athletes in the country, and they belonged in baseball. Period. The reinstatement was a major media event. It made headlines across the country. Sports Illustrated ran a cover with the headline "Welcome Home," capturing the raw emotion of the moment. After 6 long years of exile, Mays was finally allowed back into the sport he loved with every fiber of his being. He rejoined the San Francisco Giants in 1986 as a special assistant, a position that eventually evolved into a lifetime contract arrangement. He was home again, but the damage could never be fully undone. Here's the twist that makes the whole thing even more infuriating. While Ueberroth was reinstating Mays for taking a harmless casino greeter job, he was completely ignoring other integrity issues that were happening inside the sport at the exact same time. During the mid-1980s, testimony in the Pittsburgh drug trials revealed that amphetamine use, commonly known as greenies, was absolutely rampant in clubhouses across the league. Players testified openly about how liquid amphetamines were consumed before games to boost energy and focus. It was not a secret. Everyone knew it was happening. John Milner, a former teammate of Mays on the Mets, even testified that Mays himself had taken greenies during his playing days. The testimony was public record. It was in newspapers. And yet Ueberroth chose not to pursue testing for amphetamines. He focused all his energy on cocaine, which had become a public relations disaster after several high-profile arrests. But the amphetamine culture, which had been embedded in baseball for decades, was left completely untouched. So let me get this straight. The league was willing to exile a legend for 6 years because he was shaking hands at a casino, a job that had nothing to do with gambling or betting or anything illegal, but it turned a blind eye to actual drug use happening inside clubhouses, in front of coaches and managers, with everyone pretending it was just part of the game. That is selective enforcement. That is integrity used as a weapon when convenient and ignored when it is not. That is hypocrisy dressed up as principle, and it shows exactly how the league operated. The rules were not about fairness or consistency, they were about control and image. And when it came down to it, Willie Mays was expendable. His dignity was expendable. His legacy could be put on hold for 6 years because the commissioner decided that the optics mattered more than the man. The 1979 exile was not the first time Willie Mays was shut out by the system. The pattern started decades earlier, when he was still the biggest star in the game, still making highlight reel plays, still filling stadiums everywhere he went. In 1957, the New York Giants moved to San Francisco. It was a massive moment for the city. For the first time, San Francisco had a Major League Baseball team, and the face of that franchise was Willie Mays, the biggest name in baseball, a superstar who could do things on a field that no one else could. You would think that a city getting its first MLB team would roll out the red carpet for a player like that. You would think they would welcome him with open arms, grateful that someone of his caliber was coming to represent their city. But that is not what happened. When Mays tried to buy a house in San Francisco, he was told no. The house was at 175 Miraloma Drive in an exclusive neighborhood called Sherwood Forest. It was a newly built home, beautiful, spacious, 3,200 square feet, listed at $37,500. Mays offered the full asking price in cash. No mortgage, no financing, no negotiation. Just a clean, simple sale. Cash on the table. More money than most buyers in 1957 could even dream of having. The developer and owner, a man named Walter Gonset, refused to sell to him, and Gonset was remarkably candid about why. He told reporters, openly and without shame, that his business would suffer if it became known that he had sold a property to a black man. He said the neighbors had complained. He said it would hurt his reputation in the real estate industry. He said that other potential buyers, white buyers, would not want to live in a neighborhood where a black family had moved in. Mays was not asking for a discount. He was not asking for special treatment or favors. He was offering more money than most people in America had access to at the time, and he was still rejected because of the color of his skin. Because in 1957, even fame could not protect you from racism. Even being the biggest athlete in the city was not enough. The rejection became a national scandal almost overnight. San Francisco prided itself on being a progressive city, a place that welcomed diversity and innovation and new ideas, a place that was supposedly different from the rest of the country, more open-minded, more forward-thinking. And yet here was the biggest athlete in the city, the face of its new baseball team, being turned away from a home because of race. The story made headlines across the country. Newspapers ran editorials condemning the discrimination. Civil rights leaders pointed to it as proof that racism was not just a Southern problem, it was everywhere. It was a public relations nightmare for the city and for baseball. The Giants organization was embarrassed. The mayor was embarrassed. Everyone scrambled to fix it. Mayor George Christopher got directly involved. He applied significant political pressure on Gonset. He called him, he met with him. He told him in no uncertain terms that this situation was unacceptable and that it was making the entire city look bad. Christopher even went so far as to offer to let the Mays family stay in his own home temporarily, a move designed to publicly shame the developer into compliance. It worked. Eventually, Gonzetta caved under the pressure, but Mays did not get a fair deal even then. He paid the full $37,500 for the house, which was $5,000 more than the home was estimated to be worth based on comparable properties in the area. He essentially paid a premium, a black tax, just for the privilege of living there. And even after he moved in, he faced resentment from some of the neighbors. Cold stares, whispers, the subtle and not so subtle reminders that he was not fully welcome. The entire experience reinforced a hard, brutal truth that Mays had to carry with him for the rest of his life. Even at the top of the game, even as the biggest star in the sport, even as someone who could fill a stadium and make impossible plays look routine, he was still a black man in America. And that meant he had to pay more, endure more, prove more, and accept less than everyone else. No amount of talent or fame could change that fundamental reality. The housing discrimination case became a significant turning point in the fight for civil rights in California. Historians now credit the incident with helping to catalyze the broader movement for open housing laws. The publicity around what happened to Mays put pressure on lawmakers. It made it impossible to ignore the reality of housing discrimination. It eventually contributed to the passage of the Rumford Fair Housing Act in California, which outlawed discrimination in housing. That act, in turn, provided a blueprint for the National Fair Housing Act of 1968, a landmark piece of federal legislation. So in a way, what happened to Mays helped change the system for everyone who came after him. But for Mays personally, it was just another reminder that fame could not protect him from the ugliness of racism, that no matter what he achieved on the field, there would always be people who saw his skin color first and his accomplishments second. He carried that burden quietly. He did not make speeches about it. He did not organize protests or hold press conferences demanding justice. He just kept playing. He kept showing up. He kept being excellent. And that decision, that choice to lead by example rather than by confrontation, made him a target for criticism from people who wanted him to be louder, to be angrier, to be more like Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was one of those critics. Robinson had broken the color barrier in 1947 when he became the first black player in Major League Baseball. He endured death threats, racial slurs, pitches thrown at his head, and a level of abuse that is almost unimaginable today. And when he retired in 1957, he did not fade into the background. He became a full-time activist and businessman, using his platform to fight for civil rights directly. He believed deeply that athletes, especially black athletes who had been given a platform because of their talent, had a responsibility to use that platform to push for change, to challenge injustice, to speak out. And he felt that Willie Mays was wasting his. In the late 1960s, as the civil rights movement reached its peak intensity, Robinson publicly described Mays' lack of vocal activism as a damn shame. He argued that Mays did not seem to realize or appreciate how much others had fought to give him the opportunities he had. Robinson believed that Mays was standing on the shoulders of people who had endured unimaginable hardship to open doors, and that Mays had a moral obligation to kick those doors open even wider for the next generation. But Robinson also suspected that Mays was more concerned with his own security, with maintaining his status as a great star, than he was with social progress. The criticism was harsh, it was public, and it stung deeply. But Mays was not silent because he did not care. He was not avoiding activism because he was selfish or cowardly. He was silent because he believed his success was the protest. By being excellent, by being undeniable, by showing up on mainstream television shows like Bewitched, The Donna Reed Show, and The Ed Sullivan Show, Mays was proving that black athletes belonged in every space. He thought that visibility was activism, that by being accepted into white living rooms through television, by being celebrated by white fans, by winning games and breaking records, he was dismantling prejudice more effectively than confrontational rhetoric ever could. He believed that his presence as a superstar, as someone who could not be ignored or dismissed, was making it harder for white America to justify discrimination. He thought he was paving the way simply by existing at the highest level, and in his mind, he deserved the same privileges that white athletes had. The privilege to focus on his career, the privilege to think think about financial security, the privilege to not have to be a spokesperson for an entire race every single day. He wanted to be judged for his talent, not used as a symbol. Robinson thought that was not enough. That silence in the face of injustice was complicity. That Mays had a platform others would kill for, and he was wasting it. The tension between their philosophies represented a larger split in the civil rights movement itself. Robinson was confrontational by necessity and by choice. He used the press to highlight injustice. He wrote letters and gave speeches. He worked closely with Martin Luther King Jr. and the NAACP. He saw baseball as a bridge to civil rights, not the destination. The game was just a tool, a way to get attention so that the real work of dismantling racism could happen. Mays, on the other hand, saw success on the field as proof of black excellence. His son, Michael, later defended his father's approach in interviews. He said that while some people marched and protested, his father won World Series and hit home runs and made catches that made it impossible for white America to look away. He argued that both approaches mattered, that both were necessary, that someone had to be loud and someone had to be undeniable, and together they moved the culture forward. But at the time, in the heat of the 1960s, when cities were burning and activists were being beaten in the streets, Mays's quiet approach felt insufficient to people like Robinson. It felt like a betrayal of the struggle, and Mays carried that criticism with him, knowing that no matter what he did, he would be judged. If he spoke out, he would be told to shut up and play. If he stayed quiet, he would be told he was not doing enough. There was no winning. There was only enduring. But Mays's non-confrontational approach had real limits, and those limits were tested in a brutal public way in 1964 during what became known as the Alvin Dark incident. This controversy thrust Mays into the role of internal diplomat, forcing him to choose between standing with his teammates and protecting his own professional reputation. Alvin Dark was the manager of the San Francisco Giants. In July of 1964, a columnist named Stan Isaacs from Newsday published quotes from Dark that were openly racist. Dark had said that you cannot get Negro and Spanish players to have the same level of pride in their team that you can get from white players. He criticized their mental alertness, suggesting they were not smart enough to handle the pressure of crucial game situations. He claimed that black and Latino players could not cope with adversity the way white players could. At the time, the Giants roster was heavily integrated, one of the most diverse teams in baseball. Orlando Cepeda, Juan Marichal, Felipe Alou, Willie McCovey, and of course Willie Mays himself were all stars on the team. And now their manager, the man who was supposed to lead them, was openly saying that they were inferior. The comments caused immediate outrage in the clubhouse. Cepeda, who had dealt with racism his entire career, was livid. The Latino players felt disrespected and humiliated. There was talk of a boycott, talk of refusing to play until Dark was fired. The season, which had been going well, was suddenly on the verge of collapse. The team was falling apart, and everyone looked to Willie Mays to fix it. Mays, who had been named the first black captain in the National League by Dark earlier that season, a move that many critics now saw as a cynical public relations deflection, felt an enormous amount of pressure. He convened a meeting of the black and Latino players in a Pittsburgh hotel room, and he made a pragmatic, calculated argument. He told them that a mid-season managerial change would destroy their chances of winning the pennant. That firing Dark now would create chaos, bring in a new system, and ruin the chemistry they had spent all year building. He said that if they boycotted games or went to the media demanding action, the press would twist the story. They would paint the players as quitters who gave up on their manager, rather than focusing on the manager's racism. The narrative would shift from Dark's bigotry to the players' disloyalty. Mays also predicted correctly that the Giants organization would fire Dark at the end of the season regardless. That management knew they could not keep him after this, that it was just a matter of timing. So his argument was essentially this: swallow the insult, keep it playing, win the pennant, and let the front office handle Dark when the season is over. Mays successfully convinced the players to back down. The rebellion was quelled. The team stayed together, but it cost him. He felt exploited. He felt manipulated. He felt like Dark had used him as a human shield, appointing him captain, specifically so that when something like this happened, Mays would be the one expected to smooth it over. And the worst part was what happened next. After the meeting, Mays went out and hit 2 home runs in a game. Just an incredible performance under unimaginable pressure. And the press, completely missing or ignoring the context, ran headlines like Mays backs Dark with 2 homers. As if his performance on the field was some kind of endorsement of the manager. As if hitting home runs meant he agreed with what Dark had said. Mays was furious. He snapped at reporters, telling them in no uncertain terms that he played for himself and for his teammates, not for the manager. That his performance had nothing to do with supporting Dark. But the damage was done. The narrative was set. For the rest of the 1964 season, Willie Mays did not speak a single word to Alvin Dark. Not one word. Not. He showed up, did his job, and treated his manager like he did not exist. The burden of being the peacemaker, of being the one expected to hold everything together while absorbing the insults and the disrespect, wore on him deeply. He resented being put in that position, and the incident reinforced his belief that the system would always ask more of him than it asked of white players. He was expected to be excellent on the field, manage racial politics off the field, absorb criticism from both sides, and do it all with a smile and grace. The weight of that expectation was crushing. The personal toll of Mays' career extended far beyond what happened on the field or in clubhouses. It seeped into his private life, into his relationships, into the quiet moments when the crowds were gone. His first marriage to Marguerite had been a financial disaster and an emotional one. The divorce left scars that lasted for years, but his second marriage to May Louise Allen in 1971 was different. May Louise was a social worker, someone who understood hardship and resilience. She was strong, grounded, practical, and deeply supportive. For decades, they built a life together that was stable and full of love. But in 2008, May Louise was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Over the next 16 years, the disease slowly, cruelly took her memories. Mays watched the woman he loved forget their life together, forget their history, forget who he was, and he made a choice that defined the final chapter of his life. He retreated almost completely from public view to become her primary caregiver. He stopped making appearances. He stopped doing interviews. He stopped attending events. He focused entirely on her care, on making sure she was comfortable, on being there for her, even when she no longer knew who he was. Alzheimer's care is devastatingly expensive. Specialized memory care facilities can cost tens of thousands of dollars a month. Medicare only covers short-term skilled nursing care, not the long-term custodial care that Alzheimer's patients need. Mays knew the financial burden was enormous, and he knew that if he died first, May Louise would need someone to take care of her. So he went to the San Francisco Giants organization with a request. He asked them to extend his lifetime contract arrangement to include May Louise, so that if he passed away before she did, she would still have financial security. He was not asking for more money for himself. He was not trying to get rich. He was asking the organization he had given so much to take care of the woman he loved after he was gone. The Giants, recognizing his decades of loyalty and the sacrifices he had made, agreed without hesitation. It was one of the most selfless moments of his life, and it happened away from the cameras, away from the headlines, in the quiet dignity that defined so much of who Willie Mays really was. May Louise Allen died in 2013 after 41 years of marriage. The final years of caregiving had been physically and emotionally exhausting, but Mays never complained. He never asked for sympathy. He did what he always did. He endured. He carried the weight. He showed up every single day and did what needed to be done. The timeline of Willie Mays' life is a study in contrasts and contradictions. In 1950, he was a 19-year-old kid from Alabama, signing with the New York Giants for a $4,000 bonus and peanuts for a salary. By 1958, after the team moved to San Francisco, he was the highest-paid player in Giants history, earning $65,000 a year, a figure that seemed astronomical at the time. By 1963, he was making $105,000, the top salary in all of baseball. He was at the peak of his powers, untouchable on the field. In 1973, he retired with a legacy that few players in any era could match. He had done it all. And yet, just 6 years later, in 1979, he was banned from the sport because he took a job shaking hands at a casino. The system celebrated his talent when it was convenient. It put him on magazine covers and sold tickets with his name. But when he needed financial stability, when he needed to take care of himself and plan for a future without baseball, the institution turned its back on him. The league wanted him to be a symbol, not a person. They wanted the highlight reels and the myths, but they did not want to deal with the reality of a human being who had bills to pay and a life to live after the cheers stopped. The reinstatement in 1985 was supposed to be a happy ending, and in many ways it was. Peter Ueberroth welcomed Mays and Mantle back with open arms. The Sports Illustrated cover captured the emotion of the moment. Mays returned to the Giants organization as a special assistant, a role that gave him a connection to the team and a steady income. He became a beloved figure again, showing up at games, signing autographs, reconnecting with fans who had never stopped loving him. But the 6 years of exile could not be undone. The message had been sent loud and clear. The league cared more about optics than loyalty. They cared more about protecting an abstract idea of integrity than they cared about the people who had built the sport with their blood and sweat. Mays, who had given everything to baseball for nearly 3 decades, learned that the sport did not owe him anything. That gratitude had limits. That legacy could be put on hold whenever it was convenient. And once you learn that lesson, you do not forget it. The broader pattern of systemic rigidity that defined Willie Mays' career is not unique to him. Other black athletes faced similar burdens. Other pioneers paid similar prices. But it is crystallized in his story in a way that is impossible to ignore. The housing discrimination in 1957 showed that fame could not shield him from racism, that even being the biggest star in the sport was not enough to buy a house without paying a black tax. The criticism from Jackie Robinson in the 1960s showed that he was judged no matter what path he chose that silence was seen as complicity and activism was seen as distraction. The Alvin Dark incident in 1964 showed that he was expected to manage the emotions and bigotry of white authority figures, to be the peacemaker even when he was the one being insulted. And the 1979 banishment showed that the institution would sacrifice him the moment it was convenient, that his dignity and his financial security mattered less than the image of the league. The fact that Peter Ueberroth looked at the situation in 1985 and immediately called it nonsense proves that it never should have happened in the first place. The fact that Bowie Kuhn could exile a legend for 6 years over a harmless greeter job while ignoring rampant amphetamine use in clubhouses proves that integrity was a weapon, not a principle. It was something to be wielded when convenient and ignored when it was not. But Willie Mays survived all of it. He outlasted the critics who said he was not activist enough. He outlasted the commissioners who tried to control him and punish him. He outlasted the system that tried to shrink him and silence him. And in the end, his legacy is not just about the statistics or the highlight reels. It is not just about the 660 home runs or the catches or the stolen bases. It is about endurance. It is about quiet strength. It is about a man who was asked to carry more than anyone should ever have to carry, and who did it without breaking, who kept showing up, who kept being excellent, who kept proving that he belonged, even when the world kept trying to tell him he did not. The Say Hey Kid was more than a nickname. It was a persona that protected him. It was joy in the face of injustice. It was a smile in the face of cruelty. It was excellence in the face of exclusion. And it was a reminder that even when the system gets offended, even when the league pushes back, even when the world tries to tell you that you do not belong, or that you are not good enough, or that you need to know your place, you can still be great. You can still be undeniable. You can still change the game. You can still be Willie Mays. The story of Willie Mays is not just a baseball story. It is a story about America itself, about what we celebrate and what we conveniently ignore, about who we lift up when it suits us and who we push down when it is convenient, about the price of being a pioneer in a country that loves the idea of progress but resists the actual work of it. Mays paid that price over and over again. He paid it in 1957 when he could not buy a house without being humiliated. He paid it in 1964 when he was forced to be the peacemaker for a racist manager. He paid it in 1979 when he was exiled for trying to secure his financial future. And he paid it in his final years when he spent 16 years caring for a wife who could no longer remember their life together. But through it all, he never stopped being Willie. He never stopped being the legend who crushed everyone on the field. And he never let the league, no matter how hard it tried, take that away from him. MLB got offended, the commissioner got offended, the system got offended. But Willie Mays stayed Willie Mays. And that is the insane truth that nobody talks about. That is the story that deserves to be told. Not just the catches and the home runs, but the battles off the field, the systemic barriers, the institutional coldness, the price of greatness in a sport that celebrated your talent but punished your humanity. If you found this story as powerful as I did, do me a favor, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Baseball Icons if you have not already, because we are telling the stories that matter, the ones that go deeper than the highlight reels. And drop a comment letting me know what you think about how the league treated one of its greatest legends. Because this is the kind of history that deserves to be remembered. This is the kind of truth that needs to be told. Willie Mays gave everything to baseball, and baseball for 6 years told him he was not welcome. Remember that. Remember him. Remember the whole story, not just the parts that make us feel good.